The morning sun streamed through Stanford's Mitchell Auditorium windows, casting prismatic patterns that reminded me of my first quantum interference experiments. I'd arrived 2 hours early, partly from habit, decades of pre-dawn lab work, and partly to watch my daughter Sarah prep for her first semester as an assistant professor. My worn jeans and favorite old MIT sweatshirt felt comfortable, though Sarah had begged me to dress more noble-ish. But after 30 years of fighting to be taken seriously in physics, I'd earned the right to prioritize comfort over appearances. "Excuse me." A sharp voice cut through my mathematical musings. The cleaning staff was supposed to be done an hour ago. Amanda Wright, the symposium coordinator, clipped toward me in designer heels that probably cost more than my first year's lab budget. "The Nobel laureate will be here in 2 hours," she continued, thrusting a vacuum cleaner at me. "We need this place immaculate, and please change into a proper custodial uniform before the guests arrive." I accepted the vacuum, curiosity piqued. In my experience, the most interesting data often came from unexpected variables. "The Nobel laureate must be quite particular about cleanliness," I observed mildly. "Dr. Patel is the most important speaker we've had all year," Amanda declared, checking her tablet. "First woman of color to win for physics, revolutionize quantum computation theory. We can't have anything less than perfection." "Interesting," I said, examining the vacuum's motor housing. "Actually, this model's frequency would interfere with the quantum demonstration equipment being set up." Amanda's head snapped up. "How would you know about—" "Mom." Sarah's voice echoed from the doorway. "I thought we agreed you'd wear the suit." Amanda's tablet clattered to the floor. "Mom," she squeaked. "But that would mean you're—" "Dr. Maya Patel," I confirmed, extending my hand. "Though I'm actually more concerned about this vacuum's potential interference with the quantum demonstration than my outfit." The coordinator's face cycled through several quantum states of its own, finally settling on mortified horror. Dr. Patel, Your Honor, I didn't." "Mom likes to arrive early to check the equipment," Sarah explained, shooting me the same exasperated look she'd given me since childhood, though she promised to dress appropriately. "Quantum mechanics doesn't care what I'm wearing," I pointed out, already moving toward the demonstration setup. "But these frequency patterns could disrupt the entire presentation." I'll get facilities to delay the cleaning," Amanda stammered, backing away. "I'm so terribly sorry, Dr. Patel. If I'd known." "But that's rather the point, isn't it?" I called after her, retreating form. "We make assumptions based on appearance, yet particles don't care about human prejudices. Quantum superposition exists regardless of who observes it." Sarah sighed, helping me examine the equipment. "You could have told her who you were immediately, and miss a chance to observe human behavior in its natural state." Besides, she provided an excellent opening for today's lecture on unconscious bias in scientific institutions. The auditorium doors burst open as Professor Chen, the department head, rushed in. "Dr. Patel, we had a welcome reception planned. Why didn't you check in at the VIP entrance?" "The service entrance provided valuable research data," I replied, adjusting a laser array. "Did you know your cleaning equipment could potentially disrupt quantum measurements?" What?" He blinked, then turned to Sarah. "Dr. Patel Jum, your mother is—" "Brilliant and impossible," Sarah finished. "Yes, I know. I grew up with her running physics experiments during breakfast." "The toast-based quantum tunnel demonstration was very effective," I reminded her. "You got an A+ on that science fair project." More faculty members were filtering in, their expressions shifting from dismissal to recognition as they spotted Sarah. The whispers started. "That's Dr. Patel, Nobel laureate, quantum computing breakthrough." "We have a special podium prepared," Professor Chen said anxiously, "and a proper lab coat if you prefer." "This sweatshirt has seen me through 3 major breakthroughs," I replied. "I think it's earned its place in quantum history. Now about these interference patterns." The next hour passed in a blur of technical adjustments and awkward apologies. Amanda reappeared with coffee, then fled when I attempted to discuss the quantum properties of heat distribution in liquid systems. Several professors who'd earlier ignored my presence now hovered nearby, desperately trying to join the conversation. "Your mother is quite unique," I overheard one telling Sarah. "She says physics taught her that observation changes outcomes," Sarah replied. "So she likes to control when people realize they're being observed." By the time the auditorium began filling with students and faculty, word had spread about the morning's mistaken identity. I noticed Amanda had disappeared completely, though she left a handwritten apology note that included 3 references to my groundbreaking work in quantum decoherence. "Ready for your introduction?" Sarah asked, straightening my sweatshirt's collar in a gesture that reminded me of her grandmother, another woman who'd broken barriers in her field. "Almost," I said, pulling out my old notebook, the same one where I first sketched the quantum computations that would eventually win the Nobel. I'm adding a new opening section about institutional assumptions and their effect on scientific observation, using this morning as a case study. The best data comes from real-world experiments, I smiled. Besides, they're all expecting a lecture on quantum mechanics. Why not show them how human behavior operates in superposition states of its own? Sarah groaned, but I saw the proud glint in her eyes. The same look I'd given her when she'd announced she was following me into physics, determined to break down even more barriers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Professor Chen's voice boomed through the packed auditorium. "Please welcome our distinguished speaker, Nobel laureate in physics, Dr. Maya Pavel." I stepped onto the stage, still carrying the vacuum cleaner handle. "Before we discuss quantum mechanics," I began, "let's examine another type of uncertainty principle, the one that assumes a woman in casual clothes must be the cleaning staff." The auditorium buzzed with uncomfortable recognition as I placed the vacuum cleaner prominently on the podium. In the front row, Amanda Wright seemed to be trying to achieve quantum tunneling through her seat. "Quantum mechanics teaches us that the act of observation changes the outcome," I continued, pulling up my first slide, a split image of myself in cleaning clothes beside one in full academic regalia receiving the Nobel. "Similarly, human observation is tainted by our preconceptions. When you saw me this morning, which state did you collapse my wave function into?" Sarah, standing at the side of the stage, covered her face, but I caught her suppressed smile. She'd seen me turn uncomfortable moments into teaching opportunities her entire life. "Now consider this paradox." I clicked to the next slide, showing the mathematical equation that had earned me the Nobel Prize. When I first proposed this solution, it was rejected by 3 major journals. The same equation, when resubmitted under my married name, Dr. Pateljung, with no gender indicators, was accepted within 2 weeks. The audience shifted uneasily. Several senior faculty members suddenly became very interested in their notepads. The reviewer's notes were particularly illuminating, I continued. The first submission was deemed ambitious but unsophisticated. The second was brilliant and groundbreaking. The only variable that changed was the observer's perception. Professor Chen, who'd been one of those original reviewers, though he didn't know I knew, tugged at his collar. "But this isn't about assigning blame," I assured them, moving to the quantum demonstration setup. "It's about understanding how observation affects reality, both in quantum mechanics and human interaction. Watch this." I activated the laser array, creating a complex interference pattern on the screen. When we observe quantum particles, they behave differently. When humans know they're being observed, they also behave differently. This morning, I conducted a social experiment parallel to this quantum one. In the back row, a student raised her hand. "Dr. Patel, are you saying you deliberately didn't correct people's assumptions?" "Exactly," I smiled. "I wanted to observe behavior in its natural state, unaffected by the knowledge of being watched. Just as these particles create their natural interference pattern only when we're not measuring them directly." "But that's," Amanda finally found her voice, "that's rather unfair to those of us who made incorrect assumptions." "Is it?" I adjusted the laser's frequency. "Or is it unfair that after 30 years of publications, a Nobel Prize, and countless contributions to quantum theory, I'm still immediately categorized as cleaning staff based on appearance and ethnicity?" The silence was profound. I let it stretch, just as I'd learned to let quantum calculations run their full course. "Here's another paradox," I continued. "This morning, multiple people lectured others about my achievements without recognizing me. What does that tell us about the gap between intellectual understanding of bias and its practical application?" Sarah stepped forward right on cue, carrying my original notebook. "Mom's been documenting these interactions for decades. They're actually part of a larger study on institutional bias in scientific fields. A study which," I added, "has produced some fascinating correlations with quantum behavior." For instance, just as particles can exist in multiple states until observed, people often hold multiple contradictory beliefs until confronted with their own actions. I clicked to a new slide showing statistical data. Over 30 years, I've documented 847 incidents of being mistaken for support staff at academic institutions. The frequency didn't decrease after winning the Nobel Prize. If anything, it increased due to more speaking engagements. Professor Chen finally spoke up. Dr. Patel, what can we do to address this quantum state of bias? First, we acknowledge that good intentions aren't enough. I replied, switching off the laser array. Just as quantum computing required us to completely rethink classical computing assumptions, addressing bias requires us to completely rethink our institutional assumptions. I picked up the vacuum cleaner again. This morning, no one questioned whether a woman in casual clothes belonged in this auditorium. The assumption wasn't just about what I was, but about what I couldn't be. But you're Dr. Maya Patel, Amanda protested. You're famous. Am I? Or am I a quantum superposition of identities? Nobel laureate, mother, scientist, immigrant's daughter, and yes, someone who's not afraid to clean an auditorium if needed. The question is, why did you observe only one of those possible states? The rest of the lecture wove between quantum mechanics and social commentary, demonstrating how the principles of uncertainty and observation applied to both particles and people. By the end, even Amanda was taking notes. In conclusion, I said, gathering my materials, quantum mechanics teaches us that reality is more complex than our classical observations suggest. Perhaps it's time we apply that lesson to how we'd observe each other. The applause was thunderous, though I noticed it held a different quality than usual, less automatic appreciation, more uncomfortable self-reflection. As students filed out, many stopped to apologize for their earlier assumptions. I waved them off with a smile. Don't apologize. Learn. And next time you see someone who doesn't fit your expected pattern, remember that particles don't fit our classical patterns either. Mom, Sarah approached with Professor Chen. The department would like to offer you a distinguished visiting position. To research quantum mechanics or human behavior? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Both, Chen admitted. We clearly need the latter as much as the former. I considered the offer, thinking of all the other women in science who've been mistaken for support staff. All the brilliant minds overlooked because they didn't fit expected patterns. I accept, I said finally, on one condition. We establish a mentorship program for underrepresented students in physics. Let's create some new quantum states of possibility. Agreed, Chen nodded quickly. Though perhaps we should get you a proper office first. Oh no, I smiled, patting my old sweatshirt. I'll keep my current state of superposition. It's proven to be an excellent research tool. Sarah rolled her eyes, but I caught her proud smile. She understood that sometimes the most powerful lessons came not from formal lectures, but from moments of forced self-reflection. As we left the auditorium, I noticed Amanda supervising the actual cleaning staff with a new awareness in her expression. Sometimes I reflected the most important quantum leap was the one that happened in people's minds. 6 months into my visiting position at Stanford, the changes were subtle but significant. My old MIT sweatshirt had become something of a legend. Students never quite knew whether they'd find me in formal academic attire or my comfortable lab clothes, which led to some interesting discussions about appearance and authority in science. The most remarkable transformation was in Amanda Wright. After a quantum interference demonstration, she'd thrown herself into organizing a conference on diversity in physics with unexpected passion. Dr. Patel, she caught me one morning as I was setting up an experiment. Would you believe the Nobel Committee called asking if he'd be wearing traditional Indian formal wear to the next ceremony? What did you tell them? I asked, adjusting a laser. I said they should focus on your upcoming paper on quantum entanglement rather than your wardrobe. Then I sent them your lecture notes on observer bias. I smiled, remembering her very different attitude 6 months ago. You've come a long way from handing me cleaning supplies. She flushed but held her ground. That's actually why I started the mentorship program for first-generation science students. I realize how many brilliant minds we might be overlooking because they don't fit our quantum state of typical scientists. The mentorship program had exceeded all expectations. We now had 30 undergraduate students, mostly young women and minorities, working on advanced physics projects. More importantly, they were working in their own clothes, speaking in their own voices, bringing their unique perspectives to quantum mechanics. Sarah's career had also taken an interesting turn. Her lecture series on quantum mechanics and social dynamics had become the department's most popular course. "Mom," she said during one of our shared lab sessions, "remember how you used to tell me that particles don't care about our expectations?" Yesterday, one of my students said she finally felt free to be both a physicist and herself. The department had made other changes too. Professor Chen had implemented a blind review system for research proposals, leading to a surprising diversity in approved projects. The cleaning staff were now invited to department events as guests, not workers. Small changes, perhaps, but like quantum effects, small changes could have massive consequences. One morning, I arrived at the auditorium where it had all started to find a group of students practicing their dissertation defenses. They were dressed in everything from suits to saris to hijabs to hoodies. "Dr. Patel," one called out, "we're using your quantum observation principle. Want to watch us practice?" I settled into a seat, noting how confidently they owned their space, their identity, their science. No one was trying to collapse into a single expected state. "Professor Wright suggested we focus on our research, not our appearance," another student explained. She said something about quantum superposition of identity. Amanda, now heading the department's diversity initiative, had taken the quantum mechanics metaphor and run with it. Every new faculty orientation included my vacuum cleaner story and a discussion of the observer effect in academic bias. The vacuum cleaner itself had been mounted in a display case outside the physics department, alongside my Nobel medal and a simple plaque. "Observer effect in action. Dr. Maya Patel, 2025. But the real victory came in small moments. A young woman in a headscarf confidently leading a quantum physics seminar. A maintenance worker joining a scientific discussion during his lunch break. A brilliant mind being noticed for their ideas rather than their appearance. The thing about quantum mechanics," I told a reporter who asked about the changes, "is that it teaches us reality is more complex than our classical observations suggest." The same is true of people. When we stop trying to force everyone into classical states of existence, we discover whole new dimensions of possibility. Sarah found me later in my lab, still wearing my faithful old sweatshirt while working on cutting-edge quantum computations. "You planned all this, didn't you?" she asked. "That morning with the vacuum cleaner, you knew exactly what you were doing." Like any good quantum experiment, I replied, adjusting my equipment. I simply created the conditions for observation and let nature take its course. She laughed, pulling on her own well-worn lab coat. "Mom, you're still impossible." "No," I corrected, watching another generation of diverse young scientists fill our halls. "I'm just in a superposition of possibilities, just like physics should be." The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton gleamed with old money confidence and new money anxiety. I adjusted my comfortable denim shirt, the same one I wore when signing my first billion-dollar deal. My son Michael had begged me to dress like a proper CEO. But after 3 decades of breaking barriers in finance, I'd earned the right to prioritize comfort over appearances. "You there?" A sharp voice cut through my thoughts. Kitchen staff entrance is through the back. Diana Whitmore, the summit's executive director, strode toward me in Louboutins that cost more than my first month's rent in the Bronx. She thrust a stack of plates into my arms. "We're short 3 servers, and Elena Torres is speaking today," she said, checking her designer watch. "Everything must be perfect. She's revolutionized sustainable energy investment." I accepted the plates, curiosity piqued. In my experience, the most valuable market intelligence often came from unexpected places. "Miss Torres must be quite impressive," I observed mildly. "Built a $47 billion empire from nothing," Diana declared, tapping on her tablet. "Started with her immigrant parents' bodega money, if you can believe it. Now she's the queen of green energy investment." "Fascinating," I said, examining the fine china. "Though these plates seem a bit formal for a conference on sustainability. Have you considered bamboo serviceware? The carbon footprint." Diana's head snapped up. "How would you know about—" "Mom," Michael's voice rang out across the ballroom. "I thought we agreed you'd wear the Armani." Diana's tablet clattered to the marble floor. "Mom," she stammered. "But that would mean you're—" "Elena Torres," I confirmed, carefully setting down the plates. And I stand by my point about the carbon footprint of fine china. Color drained from Diana's face as she recognized the woman whose biography she'd presumably helped compile for the conference materials. Miss Torres, I didn't. Mom likes to get a feel for venues before speaking, Michael explained, shooting me the same exasperated look he perfected since childhood. Though she promised to dress the part today. The market doesn't care what I'm wearing, I pointed out, already moving toward the presentation area. But these energy consumption levels in your venue choice, those matter. I'll speak to the hotel about the plateware, Diana stuttered, backing away. I'm so terribly sorry, Miss Torres. If I'd known. But that's rather the point, isn't it? I called after her retreating form. We make assumptions based on appearance, yet money doesn't care about prejudice. Green energy doesn't check your outfit before reducing carbon emissions. Michael sighed, helping me inspect the stage setup. You could have told her who you were immediately, and missed the chance to observe how people treat those they think are beneath them. Besides, she just gave me an excellent opening for my keynote on blind spots in investment strategy. The ballroom doors burst open as Charles Wellington Ayui, the conference chair, rushed in. Miss Torres, we had a VIP welcome planned. Why didn't you come through the main entrance? The service entrance offered valuable market research, I replied, examining the lighting system. Did you know this venue's energy efficiency rating is abysmal? Hardly appropriate for a sustainable investment conference. What? He blinked, then turned to Michael. Mr. Torres Goldman, your mother is brilliant and impossible, Michael finished. Yes, I know. I grew up watching her turn down billion-dollar deals over environmental impact statements. The Hampton Mills rejection taught you more about integrity than any business school could, I reminded him. Sometimes the best investment is in your principles. More finance executives filtered in, their expressions shifting from dismissal to recognition as they spotted Michael. The whispers started. That's Elena Torres, sustainable energy pioneer, turned down the Saudi sovereign fund. We have a special preparation room, Charles said anxiously, and a proper suit, if you prefer. This shirt has seen me through 3 market crashes, I replied. I think it's earned its place in financial history. Now about these energy consumption metrics. The next hour passed in a blur of technical adjustments and awkward apologies. Diana reappeared with premium coffee, then fled when I brought up the environmental impact of single-use cups. Several executives who had earlier ignored my presence now hovered nearby, desperate to join the conversation. Your mother is quite unconventional, I overheard one tell Michael. She says the market taught her that appearance and reality rarely match, Michael replied. So she likes to see how people act when they don't know they're dealing with a billionaire. By the time the ballroom began filling with investors and analysts, word had spread about the morning's mistaken identity. I noticed Diana had disappeared completely, though she left behind a handwritten apology note with 3 references to my groundbreaking work in sustainable finance. Ready for your keynote? Michael asked, straightening my collar in a gesture that reminded me of his grandmother, who taught me my first lessons about money and dignity in that small bronze bodega. Almost, I said, pulling out my old notebook, the same one where I first sketched the sustainable investment model that would eventually build my empire. I'm adding a new opening section about institutional blindness and its effect on market opportunities, using this morning as a case study. The best market research comes from real-world observation, I smiled. Besides, they're all expecting a lecture on green energy investment. Why not show them how human bias creates market inefficiencies? The ballroom buzzed with uncomfortable recognition as I placed the stack of fine china plates at the edge of the podium. In the front row, Diana Whitmore seemed to be trying to disappear into her designer briefcase. Let's talk about market inefficiencies, I began, pulling up my first slide. A split image of myself in work clothes beside one of me in formal attire ringing the New York Stock Exchange bell. The market, in theory, is rational and unbiased. But markets are made of people, and people have blind spots. How many billion-dollar opportunities have been missed because investors couldn't see past their own prejudices? Michael, standing at the back of the room, was trying not to smile. He'd watched me turn uncomfortable moments into investment opportunities his entire life. Consider this case study. I clicked to the next slide, showing the growth chart of my first sustainable energy fund. When I launched this fund in 1995, every major bank turned it down. One executive told me to stick to running my parents' bodega. That fund has since generated a 3,200% return. The audience shifted uneasily. Several prominent fund managers suddenly became very interested in their phones. The same investment proposal, when presented by a male colleague, received immediate interest. I continued. The only variable that changed was the messenger. In market terms, we call this an inefficiency. In human terms, we call it bias. Charles Wellington Ayuli, one of those early rejectors, though he didn't know I remembered, loosened his tie uncomfortably. But this isn't about assigning blame, I assured them, moving to a real-time market data display. It's about identifying untapped opportunities. This morning, I conducted a market research experiment in this very room. A young analyst raised her hand. Miss Torres, are you saying you deliberately didn't correct people's assumptions? Exactly, I smiled. Just as I've done at countless venues over 30 years. The data is fascinating. Would you like to see the correlation between how I'm treated and the investment opportunities I'm offered? I switched to a new slide showing 3 decades of data. In 847 documented incidents of being mistaken for support staff, I was subsequently able to identify market opportunities those same institutions had overlooked. Their bias created our advantage. Diana finally found her voice. But that's rather manipulative, isn't it? Is it? I adjusted my presentation. Or is it manipulative that after building a $47 billion firm, winning multiple global sustainability awards, and revolutionizing green energy investment, I'm still immediately categorized as kitchen staff based on appearance and ethnicity? The silence was worth billions in market insight. Here's an interesting market pattern. I continued. This morning, multiple people lectured others about my achievements without recognizing me. What does that tell us about the gap between intellectually understanding market opportunities and practically recognizing them? Michael stepped forward right on cue, carrying my original business plan. Mom's been documenting these interactions as part of a larger study on missed market opportunities due to institutional bias. A study which, I added, has identified over $300 billion in overlooked investment potential in underserved markets and overlooked founders. That's not just a social justice issue. It's a massive market inefficiency. I clicked to a new slide showing investment return data. Firms with the most diverse investment teams consistently outperform their peers. Yet the industry remains remarkably homogeneous. In market terms, that's irrational behavior. Charles Wellington finally spoke up. Ms. Torres, what's your recommendation for addressing this market blindness? First, we acknowledge that good intentions aren't enough, I replied, picking up one of the fine china plates. Just as sustainable energy required us to completely rethink traditional energy investment models, addressing market bias requires us to completely rethink our investment assumptions. But you're Elena Torres, Diana protested. You're a legend in sustainable finance. Am I? Or am I a market opportunity you almost missed this morning? How many other Elena Torreses are out there, being directed to service entrances instead of investment meetings? The rest of the keynote wove between market analysis and social commentary, demonstrating how overlooked opportunities often come disguised in unexpected packages. By the end, even the most skeptical attendees were taking notes. In conclusion, I said, gathering my materials, the market rewards those who see opportunities others miss. Perhaps it's time we expanded what we're willing to see. The applause was thunderous, though I noticed it held a different quality than usual. Less automatic appreciation, more uncomfortable self-reflection. As people filed out, many stopped to apologize for their earlier assumptions. I waved them off with a smile. Don't apologize, invest. The next billion-dollar opportunity might come from someone you'd normally direct to the kitchen. Mom, Michael approached with Charles Wellington. The investment committee would like to discuss a partnership opportunity to invest in sustainable energy or sustainable thinking. I asked, raising an eyebrow. Both, Charles admitted. We clearly need the latter to succeed in the former. I considered the offer, thinking of all the other entrepreneurs who'd been dismissed. All the brilliant ideas overlooked because they came in unexpected packages. I'll consider it, I said finally, on one condition. We establish a fund specifically for overlooked founders. Let's turn market bias into market opportunity. Agreed, Charles nodded quickly. Though perhaps we should get you a proper office first. Oh no, I smiled, patting my comfortable shirt. I'll keep my current approach. It's proven to be an excellent screening tool for potential partners. Michael rolled his eyes, but I caught his proud smile. He understood that sometimes the best investment opportunities come not from formal pitches, but from moments of forced self-reflection. As we left the ballroom, I noticed Diana organizing a diversity and inclusion panel for the afternoon session. Sometimes, I reflected, the best returns come from investing in people's potential to change. 6 months after the conference, my kitchen staff incident had become a case study at top business schools. My worn denim shirt was now displayed in Harvard Business School's Leadership Museum, alongside a simple plaque. Look past the package, Elena Torres Market Inefficiency Test, 2025. The most remarkable transformation came from Diana Whitmore. After our encounter, she launched a successful consulting firm helping investment companies identify their blind spots. Her tagline? Don't miss your Elena Torres moment. You won't believe this, Michael said during our weekly strategy meeting. Diana's firm just helped uncover a $2 billion opportunity in sustainable agriculture, led by a former farm worker most VC firms wouldn't even meet. Let me guess, I smiled. They didn't like his clothes. They didn't like anything about him. Until Diana made them do your service entrance test. Now he's revolutionizing vertical farming technology. The ripple effects continued spreading through the industry. Major investment firms began implementing blind pitch sessions, where proposals were evaluated without revealing the identity of the founders. Several discovered that removing visual bias increased their returns by over 40%. The Torres Fund for Overlooked Founders, which we launched after the conference, had already backed 30 startups, mostly led by women, minorities, and other non-traditional entrepreneurs. More importantly, these founders were encouraged to come as they were, no expensive suits required. Mom, Michael said during one portfolio review, remember how you used to tell me that money doesn't care who makes it grow? Yesterday, one of our founders said she finally felt free to be both a CEO and herself. The industry had made other changes too. Charles Wellington implemented anonymous first-round investment screenings, which resulted in a surprisingly diverse portfolio. Service staff at financial conferences were now treated as potential future speakers. Small changes, perhaps, but in finance, small changes yield compound returns. One morning, I visited the Ritz-Carlton where it all started, this time for a pitch competition we were hosting. The contestants wore everything from traditional cultural dress to work clothes to hoodies. Miss Torres, one young entrepreneur called out, "We're using your market inefficiency principle. Want to hear our pitches?" I settled into a seat, noting how confidently they owned their space, their ideas, their potential. No one was trying to fit someone else's image of success. Diana taught us to focus on our innovation, not our appearance, another founder explained. Something about market opportunities hiding in plain sight? Diana, now a regular speaker on bias and investment, had taken my impromptu lesson and turned it into a movement. Every major investment conference now included the Torres tests, sending plainly dressed people with brilliant ideas to see how they were treated. But the real victory came in small moments. A woman in a hijab confidently pitching to major VCs, a former custodian presenting his technology innovation, a brilliant mind being recognized for ideas, not outfits. The thing about markets, had told a CNBC reporter who asked about the changes, is that they're supposed to be rational. When we let bias cloud our judgment, we're not just being unfair, we're being bad investors. Michael found me later in my office, still wearing my signature casual clothes while reviewing billion-dollar deals. "You planned all this, didn't you?" he asked. "That morning with the plates, you knew exactly what you were doing." Like any good investment, I replied, studying a promising proposal. I simply identified an inefficiency in the market and let the opportunity reveal itself. He laughed, loosening his own tie. "Mom, you're still impossible." "No," I corrected, watching another generation of diverse entrepreneurs fill our halls. "I'm just a market opportunity in comfortable clothes, just like finance should be." The next day, I received a package from Diana. Inside was a serving plate made of sustainable bamboo with a note. Sometimes the best opportunities come on the humblest platters. Thank you for teaching me to really see. I placed it on my desk, next to my latest acquisition deal, a $5 billion renewable energy project led by a former kitchen worker who taught himself engineering. He pitched to us in his work clothes, and we saw exactly what mattered: the future. The gleaming floors of the Maxwell Gallery reflected designer heels and bespoke suits as Manhattan's elite gathered for the season's most anticipated opening. I adjusted my worn denim overalls, comfortable in my disguise of paint-splattered fabric and calloused hands. My daughter Emma had spent months curating this show, centered around my latest series, though she was the only person who knew that Jam's shadow was actually Jenny Martinez, her supposedly struggling artist mother. "Excuse me," a voice dripping with disdain cut through my observations. "The bathroom in the East Wing needs attention. There's a situation." Victoria Maxwell, the gallery owner's wife, stood before me in a gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She dangled a ring of maintenance keys like they were contaminated. "Of course," I said quietly, accepting the keys. As I turned away, I heard her mutter to her companion, "These maintenance people really should dress more appropriately. What if they run into Jan's shadow?" I bit back a smile. The art world had spent 3 decades trying to unmask Jan's shadow, spinning theories about reclusive billionaires and mysterious European aristocrats. No one suspected the middle-aged Latina woman who taught community art classes in Brooklyn. The bathroom did indeed need attention. Someone had spilled red wine on the imported marble. As I knelt to clean it, the door swung open. "Mom." Emma's whispered voice was panicked. "What are you doing? Your painting just sold for $12 million. "Cleaning up wine," I replied calmly, scrubbing the stain. "How's the showing going?" "It's incredible." "But you should be out there. The Times art critic is practically crying over your new piece, hidden in plain sight." I smiled at the irony. That particular painting, prominently displayed in the main hall, was a self-portrait of sorts, a figure in workers' clothes surrounded by oblivious wealthy patrons, their faces turned away from the true art in their midst. "You know why I stay anonymous," I reminded her. "Art should speak for itself, not for its creator's identity." Emma slumped against the bathroom wall, her curator's badge catching the light. "I know, but watching them treat you like this while worshiping your work, it's maddening." "It's enlightening," I corrected. "Every sneer, every dismissive glance, they fuel my art." "Why do you think my latest series resonates so deeply? I paint what I see from down here, on my knees, cleaning their messes." The bathroom door swung open again. Victoria Maxwell entered, then stopped short at seeing Emma. "Miss Martinez, what are you doing in here with the help? The Rothschilds are asking about veiled society, and Jan Shadow's agent is supposedly making an appearance tonight." Emma straightened, her professional mask sliding into place. "Of course, Mrs. Maxwell. I was just ensuring all areas of the gallery meet our standards." "Well, do that on your own time. Honestly, fraternizing with maintenance staff. What would GM Shadow think of how we're presenting their work?" I caught Emma's eye in the mirror, seeing her struggle not to laugh. "I imagine," I said mildly, wringing out my mop, "that Jan Shadow would be very interested in how all people are treated in this space." Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "The help has opinions on art now. Next you'll tell me you understand the deep symbolism in Shadow's work." "Actually," Emma started, but I shook my head slightly. These moments were too precious for my art, too revealing of the very attitudes I painted about. "I just cleaned the floors, ma'am," I said, watching Victoria's satisfaction at having her prejudices confirmed. After they left, I finished cleaning and made my way to the main gallery. The space hushed as people gathered around my newest piece. A massive canvas depicting a woman cleaning windows, her reflection showing a crowned queen, while gallery patrons looked straight through her. The mastery of light, the commentary on social invisibility, a critic was expounding. James Shadow has outdone themselves. This is clearly drawn from profound personal experience with society's hierarchies. If he only knew. I painted it after spending last year's gallery opening polishing windows while listeners like him pontificated about my work's mysterious origins. Emma appeared at my side, holding a maintenance request form as cover. "The Guggenheim is fighting with the Louvre over veiled society," she whispered excitedly. "And you'll never guess what Victoria Maxwell said about your work. That it speaks of her soul." I guessed, remembering how she dismissed me moments ago. She said she feels a deep personal connection to the themes of social justice and invisible labor, called it a profound indictment of privilege, while simultaneously snapping at a waiter for serving her domestic champagne. I pulled out my notebook, the one everyone assumed was for cleaning schedules, but actually held my preliminary sketches. That's going in the next series. Mom, Emma's voice turned serious. Don't you ever want to reveal yourself? Just once, to watch their faces when they realize? What would that accomplish? I asked, watching Victoria Maxwell hold court near my self-portrait, probably explaining art to people who worked 3 jobs to afford rent. The moment they know who I am, the art stops being about the message and becomes about the messenger. But the second they know JM's shadow is a working-class Latina who cleans their spaces, they'll start seeing different things in the paintings. Suddenly, my commentary on social structures will become angry or bitter. Better to let them reveal their true selves to me, thinking I'm invisible. That's where the real art comes from. The gallery lights dimmed slightly, the signal that my agent was about to make his scheduled non-appearance, a ritual we maintained to fuel the mystery. The crowd hushed, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the famously reclusive artist. I should go, I smiled, lifting my mop. The bathrooms in the West Wing need attention, and I believe JM's shadow would want their gallery kept immaculate. Emma watched me go, shaking her head at the irony of the world-famous artist voluntarily cleaning toilets while millionaires fought over her canvases. The night progressed like a living canvas, each interaction adding layers to my mental composition. In the West Wing bathroom, I listened to 2 gallery owners discuss my work while fixing their makeup, completely ignoring my presence. GM's shadow must be European nobility, one declared, blotting her lipstick. Only old money could understand class dynamics so intimately. I heard Shadow's a reclusive billionaire, her companion replied. The agent won't confirm or deny, which basically confirms it. I adjusted my cleaning cart, mentally sketching their poses, the casual way they talked about wealth while stepping around my mop bucket as if it were invisible. Perfect for my next piece. The bathroom door burst open, and Emma rushed in, her face flushed with excitement and frustration. Mom, you need to see this. They're interpreting veiled society completely wrong, and I can't correct them without revealing. Show me, I said, pushing my cart behind her as cover. In the main gallery, Victoria Maxwell was holding court before my largest painting, a triptych showing 3 versions of the same scene. A maintenance worker cleaning a museum floor. In the first panel, wealthy patrons looked through her. In the second, she wore a ball gown, and they fawned over her. In the third, she was both at once, split down the middle, challenging viewers to confront their own biases. Clearly, Victoria was saying to her rapt audience, Shadow is critiquing the working class's inability to appreciate fine art. See how the cleaner never looks up at the paintings? It's about educational disparities. My hands tightened on my mop handle. Beside me, Emma made a small choking sound. Actually, a quiet voice cut through the murmuring crowd. I believe it's about institutional blindness. The speaker was an elderly woman in a simple dress, her hands bearing the same work-worn calluses as mine. Maria Garcia, my first art teacher from the community center, who had encouraged me to keep painting even when I was a single mother working 3 jobs. The worker doesn't look up, Maria continued, because she's internalized her expected role. The question is, why don't the patrons look down? What beauty, what humanity are they missing by refusing to see? Victoria's perfectly penciled eyebrows arched. And you are? Just a community art teacher, Maria smiled, catching my eye across the room. She was the only other person besides Emma who knew my secret. But art speaks to all of us, doesn't it? Even the help. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. I moved closer, pretending to clean the baseboards while listening. Well, Victoria recovered. I suppose even service workers can have opinions, though understanding Shadow's complex symbolism requires a certain educational background. Does it? Maria challenged gently. Or does it require lived experience? Shadow's work consistently shows us what we choose not to see. Perhaps that's why their identity remains hidden, to force us to confront our own assumptions. Emma stepped forward, professional mask perfectly in place. Mrs. Maxwell, the Rothschilds are asking about the price of hidden in plain sight. 14 million, Victoria announced proudly. though I doubt our maintenance staff needs to concern themselves with such figures. I bit back a laugh, thinking of my bank account. I donated most of my earnings to art education programs in underserved communities, keeping only enough to live comfortably and fund Emma's education. Money had never been the point. As the crowd dispersed, Maria lingered, pretending to study the painting while speaking softly. "Jenny, your best work yet. You've captured exactly how they look through us." "Thank you for defending the piece's real meaning," I murmured, buffing an already spotless section of the floor. Someone should. Though I admit, watching Victoria Maxwell lecture about class consciousness while ignoring the actual working class people around her is its own kind of performance art. Emma joined us, clipboard held strategically to hide her expression. "The Guggenheim just offered $16 million for Veiled Society. Mom, that's your record. Use the extra $2 million to fund more community art programs," I decided, especially in areas where schools have cut arts funding. "You could buy the Maxwell Gallery with what you've earned tonight alone," Emma pointed out. Imagine Victoria's face if. If what? Victoria's voice cut in sharply. All three of us straightened. "Miss Martinez, again with the maintenance staff. And now you've let them handle confidential pricing information." I watched Emma's spine stiffen, saw the battle between professional necessity and a daughter's pride play across her face. "Mrs. Maxwell," she started, but I cut in smoothly. "My apologies, ma'am. Just curious about the pretty pictures. I'll return to the bathrooms." Victoria nodded approvingly at my apparent submission. "See that you do. Really, Emma, you're a brilliant curator, but this habit of fraternizing with the help must stop. What would Gian's shadow think?" Maria coughed slightly, covering what sounded suspiciously like a laugh. "Yes, what will the great artist think about human dignity and workplace respect?" Victoria didn't even glance at her, proving every point in my paintings without realizing it. "The artist would understand that proper boundaries must be maintained. Speaking of which, our mystery guest should be arriving soon. Emma, make sure all service staff stays out of sight during the appearance." As Victoria clicked away on her designer heels, Emma turned to me with pleading eyes. "Mom, please. Just this once. Let me tell her who you are. And rob me of these perfect moments of inspiration." I gestured at Victoria's retreating back. "That woman has inspired 3 series of paintings without ever knowing it. Her without her mask, the rest of us wearing ours. It's beautiful in its own twisted way. The best art," Maria added, "holds up a mirror to society. Jenny's mirror works precisely because they don't know who's holding it." The gallery lights dimmed again. Another signal for my supposed agent's appearance. Guests hurried to the main hall, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious JM's shadow. "That's my cue to disappear," I smiled, gripping my mop. "Emma, go do your job. Maria, thank you for always seeing what's really there." "Jenny," Maria called softly as I turned away, "you've taught them more than you know. They just haven't learned to look properly yet." I pushed my cart toward the bathrooms, already composing my next piece in my mind. A cleaning woman holding up a mirror to a gallery crowd, their reflections showing what they refused to see. That art, like truth, belongs to everyone, not just those who can afford $14 million price tags. 3 months after the gallery opening, my latest series, Reflections in Service, debuted to unprecedented acclaim. The centerpiece was a large-scale painting of the Maxwell Gallery bathroom, showing a cleaning woman whose reflection revealed a kaleidoscope of famous artists throughout history, all originally from humble backgrounds. Victoria Maxwell herself paid $20 million for it, still unaware that her bathroom conversations had inspired its creation. Emma's career soared following the successful showing. She'd been offered directorships at 3 major galleries but chose instead to split her time between the Maxwell Gallery and a new community art space we'd founded in Brooklyn. The irony, she told me one evening as we hung student artwork beside million-dollar masterpieces in our community gallery, is that they're now calling me a visionary for bringing fine art to working-class neighborhoods. Victoria keeps bragging about her gallery's social consciousness. "And how is Mrs. Maxwell handling the new inclusion initiative?" I asked, adjusting a child's finger painting beside one of my smaller works. "She's trying." Emma laughed. "Yesterday, she learned the janitor's name. Only took her 15 years. The community gallery had become something special, a place where immigrant mothers displayed art beside famous works, where maintenance staff felt comfortable enough to join art discussions, where children from all backgrounds could create without judgment. Maria ran free art classes 3 times a week, teaching the same lessons about light and shadow that she'd once taught me. Sometimes I joined her classes in my overalls, just another aspiring artist learning from a master. Your mother was one of my best students, she'd tell the class while I pretended to struggle with perspective drawings. She taught me that great art can come from anywhere. The art world continued its obsession with J.M. Shadow's identity. Theories now included Russian oligarchs, secret royalty, and even artificial intelligence. A recent ART News article suggested Shadow must be a collective of blue-chip artists, citing the impossibility of one person understanding such diverse social perspectives. I kept cleaning at high-profile galleries, collecting moments and conversations for my work. Victoria had even promoted me to head of maintenance at the Maxwell Gallery, proud of herself for this show of magnanimity. You see, she told her friends, J.M. Shadow's work has taught me to value all members of society. She still didn't know my name. But real change was happening, quietly and slowly. More galleries were offering free admission days. Art schools were expanding scholarship programs. Emma's integration of community artists into mainstream shows had started a movement. One morning, I arrived early at our community gallery to find Victoria Maxwell standing before my latest work in progress. I'd been painting it after hours, showing a diverse group of people creating art together, their reflections in the gallery windows revealing their hidden dreams and talents. The technique, she murmured, not realizing I was there. It's so familiar. For a moment, I thought about telling her, about watching her face transform as she realized how many times she'd lectured the great J.M. Shadow about proper social boundaries. Instead, I picked up my mop. Beautiful painting, I said quietly. She turned, startled. Oh, yes, well, one of our community artists. Shows promise, though obviously not comparable to J.M. Shadow. I smiled, beginning my morning cleaning routine. Maybe that's not the point. Maybe art isn't about being the best, but about being seen, really seen. She paused, actually looking at me for the first time in 15 years. That's quite insightful. You know, I never asked. What's your name? Jenny, I said, extending my calloused, paint-stained hand. Jenny Martinez. She shook it, somewhat awkwardly. You seem to know quite a bit about art, Jenny. I see it a lot from where I stand. Sometimes the best view of a gallery isn't from the center of the room, but from the corners we're cleaning. She nodded slowly, looking back at my painting with new eyes. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps we all need to learn to look from different angles. As she left, I added a final figure to my painting, a gallery owner learning to see beyond her own reflection. Sometimes I realized the greatest masterpiece isn't on the canvas, but in the slow transformation of hearts and minds, even if they never know who's really holding the brush. The elegant ballroom of St. Catherine's Medical School buzzed with expensive perfumes and entitled conversations. I adjusted my plain blue scrubs, still bearing faint traces of betadine from the emergency cerebral aneurysm I'd repaired just hours ago. A pearl-draped woman at table 8 wrinkled her nose as I passed, probably assuming I was part of the catering staff. The service here is absolutely atrocious, she stage whispered to her companion. And look at that one, couldn't even bother to change into proper serving attire. I suppressed a smile, thinking of the crisp white coat hanging in my office with Dr. Diana Chin, MD, FACS, Chief of Surgery, embroidered on it. But right now, I was content to blend into the background, watching my daughter Sophia mingle with her fellow first-year medical students. You there? The pearl-adorned woman snapped her fingers at me. We need water. Immediately. Of course, I replied quietly, taking her empty glasses. Behind her, I recognized her son, Bradley Winchester Ahier, failing to meet my eyes. He'd repeated his surgical rotation under me twice last year, more interested in his family name than learning proper suturing techniques. As I walked to the water station, I overheard snippets of conversations that made my surgeon's hands itch to grip a scalpel. My hunter was accepted at all the top schools, naturally. The Chen girl, isn't she on scholarship? How? Quaint. These diversity admissions really are lowering standards. I filled the glasses, remembering the night Sophia had called me, crying over her acceptance letter. Mom, they're saying I only got in because you're chief of surgery, but they don't even know you're my mother. She'd insisted on using her father's last name Williams, determined to earn her place without my reputation. I'd respected her choice, proud of her determination to forge her own path. Finally, Bradley's mother snatched the water glasses from my tray. Do try to be more prompt next time. Don't you know who we are? I have some idea, I murmured, catching Bradley's increasingly uncomfortable expression. A commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. Dr. Harrison, the Dean of Medicine, was greeting a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit. Dr. Chen must be running late, the dean said. Emergency surgery, I believe. Typical. Bradley's mother sniffed. These prestigious surgeons think they're above attending school functions. Probably some social climber will. Mom, Bradley interrupted, his face pale. Maybe you shouldn't. Shouldn't what? Really, Bradley, after making you repeat that rotation, the least this Dr. Chen could do is show up on time. Though what the board was thinking, appointing Ch. Dr. Chen is here, Bradley managed weakly. Oh, where? I set down my water pitcher, walked to the podium, and took out my reading glasses. The dean's face lit up with relief. Ah, Dr. Chen, I didn't recognize you in your scrubs. Successful surgery, I hope. The patient will make a full recovery, I replied, watching realization dawn across the ballroom. Though I apologize for my attire, when it's between changing clothes and saving lives, I tend to prioritize the latter. The pearl-draped woman's face had turned an interesting shade of puce. Around her, the other parents who'd dismissed me earlier were suddenly finding the ceiling fascinating. Mom. Sophia hurried forward, her face worried. You could have told them. And missed this teachable moment, I smiled, hugging her. Besides, you wanted to stand on your own merits. I respect that. Turning to the podium, I surveyed the room of future doctors, my voice carrying clearly through the now silent ballroom. Welcome, class of 2029. I'm Dr. Bayana Chen, Chief of Surgery at Manhattan General and your keynote speaker today. I came straight from Operating Room 3, where I performed an emergency cerebral aneurysm repair. I'm still in my scrubs because medicine doesn't care about designer labels or family names. It cares about competence, dedication, and humility. Bradley's mother was attempting to slide under the table. In this room, I see future surgeons, researchers, and healers. But I also see some of you already falling into the trap of privilege and prejudice. Earlier, I overheard comments about scholarship students, diversity admissions, and social climbing. The silence grew heavier. Let me be clear. In the operating room, the only thing that matters is skill. Your patient's brain doesn't care if you went to prep school. Their heart doesn't check your family's social connections, and their life certainly doesn't depend on how well you can distinguish serving staff from surgeons. Several faces flushed with shame. Today you'll receive your white coats. It's not a status symbol. It's a responsibility, a promise to see people as human beings, not social categories, to value competence over connections, to serve with humility, not entitlement. I gestured to Sophia and her classmates. Look around. Your classmates come from all backgrounds. Some are children of doctors, others are first-generation college graduates. Some have trust funds, others have student loans. But from this day forward, you're all members of the same noble profession. Meeting Bradley's mother's mortified gaze, I added, and yes, some of your children will fail their rotations. Not because of prejudice, but because medicine demands excellence. When I'm elbow deep in someone's brain, I don't care about hurting feelings or respecting family names. I care about saving lives. The dean stepped forward with the first white coat. Dr. Chen, would you do the honors? Of course, I smiled. Starting with table 8, I believe. The white coat ceremony proceeded with palpable tension in the air. Bradley Winchester II approached the podium like a man walking to his execution, his mother's face cycling through various shades of mortification. Mr. Winchester, I said clearly, holding up his white coat. During your rotations, you struggled with basic procedures because you believed your name would carry you through. Today, you start fresh. This coat demands more than a prestigious last name. Will you rise to that challenge? He met my eyes for the first time that day. Yes, Dr. Chen. I understand now. As I helped him into his white coat, I added quietly, your hands are steady, and your diagnostic instincts are good when you actually focus. Use those gifts instead of your family connections. The next hour was a parade of revelations. Students whose parents had dismissed me earlier now approached with a mixture of respect and embarrassment. Each coating became a moment of transformation, not just for the students, but for their families watching from the audience. When Sophia's turn came, I had to steady my hands. My brilliant daughter, who'd worked double shifts as a hospital orderly while maintaining a 4.0 GPA, who'd never once used my name to open doors. "Ms. Williams," I said formally, holding her white coat. The room stirred with whispers as people finally made the connection. "Your application to Street Catherine's included 3 patents for medical devices, published research on minimally invasive surgical techniques, and recommendations from doctors who didn't know you were my daughter. You earned this coat. Wear it with pride." Tears shimmered in her eyes as I helped her into the white coat. "Thanks, Mom," she whispered. After the ceremony, the reception took on a markedly different tone. Bradley's mother, Mrs. Winchester, approached our table clutching a half-empty wine glass. "Dr. Chen," she began, her voice wavering. Would you like to sit?" I offered, gesturing to an empty chair. I believe we got off to a rather interesting start with the water service. She sank into the chair, her perfect posture crumbling. "I've never been so humiliated in my life." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. I find that treating service workers with disrespect is far more humiliating than mistaking a doctor for one. Bradley joined us, still adjusting to the weight of his white coat. "Dr. Chen, I want to apologize for not speaking up earlier. I knew exactly who you were. Yet you stayed quiet while your mother made assumptions," I noted. In medicine, Bradley, silence can be fatal, whether it's speaking up about a mistake in the OR or challenging prejudices in the profession. "Is that why you didn't correct anyone?" Sophia asked, sliding into the chair beside me. "You were teaching a lesson." "Partially," I admitted, "but also because I've spent 20 years watching how people behave when they think no one important is watching. It reveals character." Mrs. Winchester flinched. When Bradley failed his rotation, I assumed, that is, I thought perhaps, that I failed him because of bias. I finished. "No, I failed him because he wasn't ready, just as I'll fail any student who puts privilege above patient care." "Mom runs the toughest surgical program in the country," Sophia added proudly. "That's why I didn't tell anyone she's my mother. I wanted to prove I could meet her standards on my own." Around us, other parents and students gathered, drawn to our conversation. The dean joined us, looking amused at the impromptu teaching session. "Dr. Chen has rejected children of board members, celebrities, and billionaires," he confirmed. "She's also promoted students from every background imaginable. Her only criterion is excellence." "But surely connections matter in medicine," someone's father protested. "The right introductions, the proper social circles." "Tell me," I interrupted, "when you're having a stroke, do you want the doctor who got their position through proper social circles, or the one who earned it through skill?" The silence was telling. "Today," I continued, looking at each student in turn, "he received more than a white coat. You received a choice. You can be the doctor who relies on family names and social connections, or you can be the doctor who saves lives regardless of who's watching or what they're wearing." Bradley straightened in his chair. "I want to retake my surgical rotation, Dr. Chen. Not because of my name, but because I want to earn it properly this time." His mother stared at him in surprise. It was possibly the first time he'd chosen the harder path over the privileged one. "You'll start Monday," I nodded. 6 a.m. sharp. Wear comfortable shoes. You'll be standing for 12 hours. As the reception wound down, Sophia helped me gather my things. "Mom, why did you really come in your scrubs? I know you keep spare clothes in your office." I smiled, pulling out my phone to show her the post-op brain scans from my emergency surgery. "Because medicine isn't about looking important, it's about being important. That patient lived because I chose surgery over changing clothes. Every future doctor needs to understand that priority." Mrs. Winchester approached one final time, having finally found her courage. "Dr. Chen, would you consider having coffee with me next week? I believe I have a lot to learn about what really matters in my son's education." "Tuesday, 7 a.m., hospital cafeteria," I replied. "The coffee's terrible, but the perspective is excellent. You can watch your son during morning rounds." As we left the ballroom, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the window, mother and daughter in matching white coats, one crisp and new, one battle-worn and stained with betadine. Both equally valuable, equally earned. Ready to change medicine? I asked Sophia. She grinned, adjusting her coat. Ready to earn it every single day. 6 months into the academic year, Street Catherine's medical school witnessed a remarkable transformation. The parking lot, once filled with luxury cars, now held more practical vehicles as students prioritized study time over status symbols. The cafeteria became a melting pot where future doctors from all backgrounds shared notes and experiences. Bradley Winchester IUI had become unrecognizable from his former self. Gone were the designer scrubs and entitled attitude. He now arrived before dawn, often wearing yesterday's coffee stains, deep in discussion with scholarship students about patient cases. Dr. Chen, he caught me after morning rounds. Remember that homeless patient from the ER? I stayed late researching his symptoms. It's not alcohol withdrawal, it's Wernicke's encephalopathy. We need to start thiamine immediately. I nodded approvingly. Already ordered. Good diagnostic work, Winchester. You've come a long way from the student who used to check his hair and reflective surfaces during procedures. His mother, true to her word, had become a regular at the hospital cafeteria. Every Tuesday she sat with different hospital staff, nurses, orderlies, cleaning crews, learning their stories and perspectives. The pearl necklaces were gone, replaced by a stethoscope she'd bought for Bradley, which she wore like a badge of honor. Sophie continued to excel, but in her own quiet way. She'd started a peer support group for first-generation medical students, sharing study techniques and emotional support. The group quickly became the highest-performing cohort in the class. You've revolutionized this place, the dean commented during a staff meeting. Applications are up 40%, especially from non-traditional students, and our clinical outcomes have improved significantly. Success leaves clues, I replied, reviewing patient charts. When we remove artificial barriers and focus on merit, medicine thrives. The annual hospital gala reflected the change. Instead of the usual society pageant, students organized a fundraiser for medical scholarships. Mrs. Winchester, now heading the parent committee, insisted on serving drinks herself. Every tray I carry, she told me, balancing water glasses, reminds me of how wrong I was that day. My son is becoming a real doctor, not just playing one for social status. The most profound change came during emergency cases. One night, a multiple trauma situation brought all hands on deck. In the organized chaos of the ER, I watched our students work seamlessly across social boundaries that would have been insurmountable months ago. Bradley, covered in blood from a critical patient, was taking orders from a scholarship student who'd once been a combat medic. Sophia coordinated with the cleaning staff to expedite room turnover, knowing every second counted. No one cared about pedigrees or positions, only about saving lives. After the crisis, I found the students debriefing in the break room. They sat in a circle, white coats stained and wrinkled, sharing lessons learned. You know, Bradley said, running a hand through his unkempt hair, my father always said connections make a doctor. But tonight, I realized what really makes us doctors, the ability to work together, to put patients first, to forget everything except the life in our hands. Sophia added, and to remember that wisdom comes from everywhere. Like how Carlos from housekeeping noticed the pattern in trauma arrivals and helped us prepare for multiple casualties. I stood in the doorway, watching this new generation of doctors emerge. They were letting go of old prejudices, embracing the true essence of medicine. The transformation had spread beyond our walls. Other medical schools were beginning to adopt our approach, prioritizing substance over status. Mrs. Winchester joined me, carrying coffee for the exhausted students. I almost didn't recognize Bradley today, she said proudly. He looks terrible, hasn't slept in days, and has never been happier. That's because he's finally becoming what he was meant to be, not a name, but a healer. As I watched these future doctors, still in their blood-stained white coats, supporting each other regardless of background, I remembered my own journey. Every slight, every assumption, every finger snap from someone who thought I was there to serve them. It had all led to this moment. Sometimes the best lessons in medicine come not from textbooks or prestigious lectures, but from simple moments of humanity, from understanding that true healing begins when we see past the surface to the heart of what matters. The white coats in that break room weren't just garments anymore. They were symbols of a new generation of medicine, where merit outweighed money and service was a badge of honor, not shame. The crystal glasses clinked at another lavish Thompson family dinner, where I sat in my $20 thrift store dress. watching my sister-in-law Rebecca adjust her Cartier bracelet for the 100th time. My husband, Thomas, squeezed my hand under the table, his silent support worth more than all the designer labels surrounding us. Alice, darling, my mother-in-law Margaret's voice dripped with honey-coated venom. We're collecting donations for the country club's annual charity gala, but don't feel pressure to contribute. We know things are tight on a teacher's salary. I smiled, thinking of the $3 million sitting in my private account, money earned from the educational software company I'd sold last year. That's thoughtful of you, Margaret. Rebecca snorted delicately into her wine glass. At least she admits she can't contribute. Unlike last month when she brought that grocery store cake to little Connor's party. Connor, Rebecca's 8-year-old son, was currently upstairs recovering from his latest heart treatment, the treatment I pay for through an anonymous donation to the hospital, just as I had for the past 3 years. The children loved that cake, I said quietly, remembering Connor's delighted face. Yes, well, children don't have refined tastes, Margaret waved dismissively. Speaking of Connor, the hospital's billing department called again today. These treatments are becoming quite challenging. Rebecca's perfectly made-up face crumpled slightly. The insurance won't cover the next procedure. They're calling it experimental. We've appealed, but... She twisted her expensive bracelet. William and I might have to sell the lake house. Not the lake house, Margaret gasped, as if selling a second home was worse than a sick child. Can't William's firm advance his partnership shares? I took a slow sip of water, knowing exactly why the insurance appeal had failed. I'd seen the documents through my hospital board position, another detail my in-laws didn't know about. The procedure cost $300,000. William, Rebecca's husband, chimed in. The firm's been having a rough year. Thomas spoke up. Maybe we could all help. On your modest salaries, Margaret cut in. Really, Thomas, I know you chose to work at that small practice instead of joining your father's firm, but suggesting you and Alice could help is just... Well, I watched Rebecca brush away tears, her Gucci dress suddenly seeming like the hollow status symbol it was. Her son needed life-saving surgery, and she was more worried about losing a vacation home. There might be another way, I said carefully. The Hamilton Children's Fund often supports cases like Connor's. The waiting list is years long, William scoffed. And they only help families who can't afford treatment. Which isn't us, Margaret added quickly. We're Thompsons. We don't take charity. No, they just judge those they thought needed it. I thought of the paperwork already on my desk, ready to be processed through the foundation I'd secretly established after selling my company. The Hamilton Children's Fund, named after my grandmother, who'd raised me with the values these people couldn't understand. Connor's doctor called me today. Rebecca's voice cracked. If we can't schedule the surgery within 2 weeks. I watched my sister-in-law break down, her expensive mascara creating black rivers down her cheeks. Around her, the family erupted in a chorus of useless suggestions. Could we mortgage the ski chalet? What about your jewelry collection? Perhaps a fundraising gala. Thomas caught my eye. He alone knew the truth about my finances, about the foundation, about the anonymous donations that had kept Connor in treatment this long. His slight nod gave me the permission I needed. The Hamilton Fund will cover Connor's surgery, I said quietly. The table fell silent. And how would you know that? Margaret's voice could have frozen fire. I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and slid it across the table. Because I just approved the emergency application. Rebecca grabbed the phone, her hands shaking. This is impossible. The foundation board only meets quarterly. The next meeting isn't for 2 months. Unless you're the founder and chairperson, I said, watching comprehension dawn across their faces. Then you can approve emergency cases immediately. William's face flushed red. You. But you shop at thrift stores. Yes, I agreed. Because I believe money should be spent on things that matter. Like children's medical care, or education grants, or anonymous donations to help families too proud to admit they're drowning in medical debt. Rebecca's mascara-stained face went pale. The anonymous donor, the one who's been helping with Connor's bills, that was you. All this time, Margaret's voice shook. You let us think. I let you think what you wanted to think. I corrected. You chose to see my second-hand clothes instead of my values. You chose to mock my simple apartment instead of asking why I live below my means. You chose appearances over substance. The silence around the table was deafening. Connor's surgery is scheduled for next Tuesday, I continued, pulling out a folder I'd brought just in case. The Hamilton Fund will cover all costs, including post-operative care and physical therapy. I've already spoken with Dr. Richards. Rebecca clutched the papers, her designer bracelet clinking against the table. Why? Why help us when we've been so cruel? I supplied. Because Connor deserves a chance at life, regardless of this family's behavior. And because sometimes the best lesson in humility is a quiet act of kindness. Alice Margaret began, but I held up my hand. I don't want apologies offered out of embarrassment or gratitude. If you want to apologize, do it by changing how you treat others. All others, not just me, now that you know I can write seven-figure checks. Thomas stood, offering me his hand. I think we should head home. You have that board meeting tomorrow, darling. As we walked to the door, I turned back to the shell-shocked family. Connor's a wonderful boy who deserves every chance at life. That's what matters. Not lake houses or charity galas or designer labels. Just a little boy who needs help. The week following my revelation was filled with a deafening parade of text messages, calls, and elaborate flower arrangements sent to both my tiny apartment and my foundation office. Each delivery came with increasingly desperate notes of apology from various Thompson family members. I donated all the flowers to Connor's hospital ward. On the morning of Connor's surgery, I sat in the waiting room, purposely choosing a plastic chair away from the cluster of Thompson family members in their designer outfits. They kept throwing uncertain glances my way, clearly unsure how to act around the family's poor relation who had turned out to be their financial savior. Rebecca approached tentatively, her usually polished appearance showing signs of stress. Alice, may I sit? I gestured to the empty chair beside me. She sat, awkwardly smoothing her silk pants. I returned the Cartier bracelet, she said quietly, and the summer collection I just bought. That's not why I helped Connor, I replied, keeping my eyes on the surgery board where my nephew's procedure was listed as in progress. I know, she twisted her now bare wrists. But after you left that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times I bought expensive things while you were secretly paying for my son's treatments. The shame, it's overwhelming. A nurse walked past, and Rebecca instinctively drew her designer bag closer. Old habits die hard. I noticed it was her usual Hermes, but then realized it was a well-worn one, not her typical new seasonal purchase. Did you know, I said, watching the surgery timer tick by, that the cost of your last 3 handbags could have funded a year of medical care for a child in need? She flinched. I never thought about it that way. That's the problem, isn't it? None of you ever thought about it. Money was for showing off, not for making a difference. William appeared, carrying 3 coffee cups from the hospital cafeteria, not the expensive coffee shop across the street. He handed us each a cup without comment, then sat heavily on my other side. I've been reviewing our household expenses, he said after a moment. The country club membership, the multiple vacation properties, the private jet shares. It's obscene, isn't it? Especially when my own son needed. His voice broke. I saw the weight of realization crushing him, how their priorities had been so catastrophically wrong. The Hamilton Fund, Rebecca spoke hesitantly, does it? Are there other children who need help like Connor? Hundreds, I replied. Every day, families choose between medical care and basic necessities. Some sell their homes, drain their retirement funds, work multiple jobs, all while caring for a sick child. Margaret approached, looking oddly diminished without her usual armor of jewelry and hauteur. The charity galas, she said, sinking into a chair opposite us. All those events we held, we raised money for art installations and symphony orchestras while children needed medical care. It's never too late to change your priorities, I offered. Will you? Rebecca hesitated. Would you teach us how to actually make a difference instead of just pretending to care? Before I could answer, Dr. Richards emerged from the surgery wing. We all stood, hearts pounding. The surgery was successful, he announced with a smile. Connor's heart is responding well to the procedure. The collective relief was palpable. Rebecca burst into tears, while William gripped my hand so tightly it hurt. Thank you, Dr. Richards, I said. When can we see him? He'll be in recovery for a few hours. But there's something else you should know. He looked around at the family. Connor's case has helped us validate this new procedure. Because of him, we can now help other children with similar conditions. The Hamilton Fund support isn't just saving Connor, it's creating a pathway for treating many more children. I watched this sink in with the Thompsons. The idea that their son's treatment could help others seemed to affect them deeply. Alice, Margaret stepped forward. The foundation, would you consider letting us help? Not with money, she added quickly, seeing my expression, but with time, effort, learning. The foundation always needs volunteers, I said carefully. People willing to sit with worried parents, help coordinate care, assist with paperwork. It's not glamorous work. We want to learn, Rebecca said firmly. Please, show us how to be more like you, and less like what we were. Later that evening, as Connor rested in his private room surrounded by simple flowers from a hospital gift shop, Rebecca had canceled the exotic flower order she'd initially placed. I watched my in-laws gather around their phones, canceling standing appointments for manicures and golf games, replacing them with volunteer orientation schedules. Thomas found me in the hallway, wrapping his arms around me from behind. You've started quite a revolution in the Thompson family. They're trying, I acknowledged. Let's see if it lasts beyond the initial shock and gratitude. It will, he said confidently. You know why? Because for the first time, they see the actual value of money, not as something to show off, but as a tool to help others. That's a lesson that sticks. A week later, I arrived at the foundation office to find Rebecca in the volunteer room, wearing simple clothes and helping a crying mother fill out assistance forms. Her expensive highlights were growing out, her nails were unpainted, and she looked more genuine than I'd ever seen her. The mother's son has the same condition Connor had, she told me during break. I've been telling her about our experience, helping her understand the treatment process. It feels good to actually help instead of just throwing money at things. William had started a pro bono program at his law firm to help families navigate medical insurance appeals. Margaret was reorganizing her social calendar around hospital volunteer shifts instead of social events. And Connor, recovering steadily, had asked for his birthday party to be held in the children's ward so his new friends from the hospital could join him. You know, Rebecca said, watching another family enter the foundation office with worried faces, I used to think being rich meant having the most expensive things. Now I realize true wealth is being able to help others. I smiled, remembering my grandmother's words that had inspired the Hamilton Fund. Money is like water. It's only useful when it flows to nurture growth, not when it sits stagnant in fancy pools. The Thompson family was finally learning to let their wealth flow in the right direction. 6 months after Connor's surgery, the transformation in the Thompson family was remarkable. The lake house had been converted into a recovery retreat for families with children undergoing long-term medical treatment. Margaret's beloved country club membership card had been replaced by a hospital volunteer badge that she wore with genuine pride. At today's foundation board meeting, I watched Rebecca confidently present a new initiative she'd developed, a program to help families navigate the complex maze of medical insurance and hospital bureaucracy. She'd become our most dedicated volunteer, working tirelessly to support other parents facing the same fears she had once experienced. The program has already helped 30 families receive approval for previously denied treatments. Rebecca explained, her simple button-down shirt and practical flats a far cry from her former designer wardrobe. We're expanding to 3 more hospitals next month. William, sitting among the board members, beamed with pride at his wife. He had restructured his law firm's priorities, dedicating 40% of its resources to pro bono medical advocacy cases. The same connections he once used to get premium golf tee times now helped expedite critical medical appeals. And how is our star patient? Dr. Richards asked after the presentation. Rebecca's face lit up. Connor's starting a peer support group for kids with heart conditions. He says if he can help just one child feel less scared, it's worth missing his video game time. The same boy who once had a playroom bigger than my apartment now spent his weekends reading to children in the hospital ward. After the meeting, Margaret approached my office, clutching a familiar-looking leather portfolio. I found this while cleaning out our storage unit, she said, placing it on my desk. All my old charity gala plans. Thousands of dollars spent on ice sculptures and champagne fountains. She shook her head. Do you know what that money could have done for the families here? The past is past, Margaret, I replied gently. What matters is what we do now. That's why I'm here. She straightened. I've dissolved the country club charity committee. Instead, we're establishing a medical assistance fund. Many of our members, well, let's just say the Thompsons weren't the only family more focused on appearances than actual charity. I thought about the ripple effects of Connor's surgery, how one family's transformation had inspired others to reconsider their priorities. The foundation's donation pool had tripled, not from brand galas, but from families redirecting their luxury budgets to meaningful causes. Alice, Margaret's voice wavered. I know we can never fully apologize for how we treated you, but seeing you work here, watching you change lives without wanting any recognition, it's taught us what real class looks like. At that moment, Thomas arrived with Connor, who rushed to give me a hug. Aunt Alice, I gave my birthday money to the foundation. Mom helped me calculate that it can pay for 10 new pulse oximeters for the pediatric ward. That's wonderful, Connor, I said, hugging him back, remembering the boy who once threw a tantrum over not getting the latest gaming console. And guess what? He continued excitedly. Dad sold his sports car. He says helping kids is better than any fancy car. Rebecca, who'd joined us, wrapped an arm around her son. We're learning from the best, she said with a smile. Though I doubt we'll ever match your level of quiet generosity. It's not about matching anyone, I replied. It's about doing what we can, where we are, with what we have. As I watched the transformed Thompson family, Margaret discussing volunteer schedules, William reviewing pro bono cases, Rebecca organizing parent support meetings, and Connor planning his next reading session with young patients, I thought about how money could either build walls or bridges. The Thompsons had finally torn down their walls of privilege and built bridges of compassion instead. Their designer labels were gone, replaced by something far more valuable, genuine empathy and purpose. You know, Thomas whispered in my ear, for a poor relation, you've certainly enriched this family in ways money never could. I squeezed his hand, watching Connor show his grandmother his new volunteer badge with the same pride she once showed off her tennis club membership card. Some fortunes are measured not in dollars, but in the lives they touch and the changes they inspire. And by that measure, the Thompson family had finally become truly wealthy.